Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this installment of Epic Insight. This is Brian Lenz, Director of Sales and Strategic Partnerships here at Epic Retirement Plan Services, and I'll be your host for today's call. As most of you are hopefully aware, we partnered with Stadion last year to offer you an extremely robust participant-level managed account solution called Storyline. And today we're going to chat a little bit more about how that concept fits into some of the modern thinking on plan design. So for the next half an hour or so, we're joined by Stadion's Chief Business Development Officer, Todd Lacey. In that role, he's responsible for overseeing the relationships with current retirement record-keeping partners, as well as identifying and developing new channels of distribution and product development within the retirement business. Todd spent his entire 20-year career in the retirement industry, and prior to Stadion, he held various roles at Transamerica as the EVP of Business Development for the U.S. and retirement business. And prior to Transamerica, Todd was the founder and president of the Clarity Group, a retirement plan advisory firm that was one of 3 finalists for the 2010 Plan Sponsor Retirement Plan Advisor Team of the Year Award. That's a mouthful, but kudos, Todd. And Todd's an active contributor to both the retirement industry and his community, having served as a co-chair of the NAPA 401k Summit and board member of the ASPA Benefits Council of Atlanta. And he currently serves as a board member of the Foundation for Mitochondrial Medicine. As always, your line will be muted, but Todd and I would love to chat about some of your questions as we wrap up today, so feel free to enter those. And with that, I'll turn it over to Todd Lacey.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it. Thank you to the whole Epic team for the opportunity and for the partnership. I am going to kind of jump right in because I know we're a little tight on time and I want to make sure we have some time for questions. But as Brian said, what I'd like to talk about today is managed accounts and how they can be used as part of an effective plan design to help employees retire successfully. So with that, I am going to fully advance my slide here. Here we go. So just very quickly about Stadion, for those of you that are not familiar with us, we are a managed account provider based in Athens, Georgia, which is about an hour outside of Atlanta. We've been doing this kind of work for a long time, about 25 years or so. We were actually one of the first firms that had a managed account product. Our founder recognized early that most retirement plan participants need help investing their money, need someone to tell them what to do, or in some cases, a lot of cases, actually do it for them, which is really what a managed account is. So we're one of the larger providers. We have multiple ways that we engage participants, both through an online service. We also work with them in person and really try to do what we can to make sure people are in the right portfolio and on track for retirement. We do work exclusively through financial advisors. So, and it's really multiple types of advisors, whether you're someone that specializes in retirement plans or just does a little bit of this business. We have different models that can accommodate how you like to work. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about some of our custom glide path creation and management capabilities. That's become kind of a newer part of what we're working on. So let's jump into plan design. I think most of us are aware that, or it's become common practice that sort of automating a retirement plan for participants is really the most effective way to try to get them on track and make the right decisions. So, dating back to really the Pension Protection Act in 2006, a lot of plans have used automatic enrollment, where instead of employees having to sign up for their 401k, they are automatically enrolled as of a certain date without having to do anything. Many companies now are also escalating their employees' contribution amounts automatically each year, and that could be 1% or more automatic kind of step up each year, which helps people increase their savings, whereas a lot of folks that are auto-enrolled, as you may know, at say a 3% level, don't tend to increase that over time. And so unfortunately what happens is people end up not saving enough because they never kind of revisit that auto deferral percentage that was put into place after they were enrolled in the plan. And then ultimately the QDIA, or the Qualified Default Investment Alternative. So when someone's auto-enrolled, their money goes into the plan, they haven't made an investment election. This is the investment vehicle that someone would be defaulted into, which we're going to make the point later in the presentation that a managed account can be used as a very effective QDIA option. So these auto features have been popular and they remain popular. Today, about 70% or so of plans utilize auto enrollment, which is really a huge percentage. So the vast majority of plans today, I think, have recognized that it's much easier to just automate that enrollment process versus trying to convince people to sign up. And then automatic contribution escalation or auto increase, which I just talked about, that actually has really taken hold as well. This stat surprised me a little bit when we first pulled it, that around 76% of plans today increase their employees' deferral percentages automatically. So really, these are great things and far better, we think, than leaving it up to the employees to kind of do it on their own. So as we think about default investments today, this kind of lays out the different types of defaults that are used. Not all of these are considered a QDIA, but these are different defaults that are used by plans. And as we all know, probably no surprise to anyone on the call, the target date funds are by far the most common default investment used today. So 86% of plans are using a target date fund as a default, about 7% or so using target risk funds, so the aggressive, moderate, and conservative type of portfolios that are not based on estimated retirement date or age. And then managed accounts actually only make up about, as a default, about 2% of the plans out there. We see that number probably increasing over time as managed accounts become more well-known, advisors become more comfortable with them, plan sponsors really understand what they are. As this segment of the market continues to develop, we think that number will go up. But there's also no doubt that target date funds are going to continue probably their dominance for a while, and I'll get back to that in a few minutes. I also think we probably are all in agreement that participants need more personalized help. People are craving help inside of their retirement plans. People just don't know how to do this stuff. They don't know how to invest their money. They don't understand the different types of investment options or how much to save. You know, over 70% are looking for some kind of personalized advice. About 65% or so feel overwhelmed by their choices. Over half don't know how much to save, and probably the scariest statistic in here is that around a third of people think their target date fund is guaranteed. So if someone's enrolled in the XYZ 2030 fund, they believe, a vast, not majority, but 30+% of people believe that that principal amount will be guaranteed as of that date. We all know that's not the case. So clearly there's some education that's needed around target date funds. Next slide here, do-it-yourself investors. The history shows that unfortunately folks that try to go it alone don't always do a great job. So this chart is showing your average investor for the past 20 years has greatly underperformed even just the S&P 500 or a 60-40 balance fund, 40-60 fund, something like that. So when people try to do it themselves, they don't always make the best decisions. A lot of this is driven, I think, by behavioral issues where someone sees the stock market go down, they panic, they feel like they need to move their money out of stocks into bonds or cash or something where they don't think they'll lose money. And what that does, as most of us know, is that's going to lock in a loss. So we know that people not only want someone to do it for them, but frankly, they need someone to do it for them in order to get a better return. So even though most people want help, very few are actually getting help or taking advantage of the services that are offered to them, the advice or money management services that are offered to them inside of their plan. So what I find sort of humorous here is that many of us, I'm one of these people that believes in outsourcing things they're not good at or they don't know how to do. So 86 or 87% of people get help changing their oil. Half of people get help installing a new faucet, certainly in my case. About a third of folks get help preparing their income taxes, so on and so forth. But only about 25% of American workers actually get help allocating their 401k dollars. So there's a big disconnect between the desire of participants to get help, or that they believe they need help, but they're just not getting it. And our perspective on that is very few people are going home at night and logging into their 401k accounts and figuring out how they're invested, and if they want advice, where to go on the site to try to get advice, or to reach out to their advisor who's working with their plan. In a lot of cases, they don't know that person. So it's a lot of work to figure out how to actually get help. It's much easier to pick up the phone and call a plumber than it is to figure out how to get advice on your retirement plan. And so that's why we believe most people are actually not getting the advice they need. So over the years, there have been different types of professional management solutions built to help people. Balanced fund, very basic investment option, usually about 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Target risk, target date funds. Target date funds have gone from kind of a bundled in the box product to more custom solutions that have come out probably over the past decade, where many larger plans in particular are having custom target date solutions built for their plan specifically. You don't see that as much in the small market because the assets are just not there to kind of justify that type of structure. But we see that probably coming down market over time. And then really the ultimate in personalization inside of a retirement plan is really your managed account. And we think this is where everything is headed. I think we'll look back in 5 or 10 years and sort of almost in disbelief about how we used to invest participant money by age only, and personalization will really be the norm in the retirement market. Okay, so speaking of target date funds, is innovation needed? First of all, let's just set a baseline of the target date fund industry and the growth over the past 10 plus years. You can see the upward trajectory there of target date assets and flows. These have been probably the most successful investment vehicle, certainly inside of the retirement plan business, but even outside of that, one of the most successful products of all time. And it's clear why that is the case. It's back to people need help. They don't know what to do. This is a very simple way to give people that help. Simply invest them based on their estimated retirement year. These funds will get more conservative over time. They'll automatically rebalance, and the employee doesn't have to do much at all. And because they're used as the most common default option, money goes in and many people don't move their money out. And so that's really where this growth has come from. So despite the growth, I think there's been in a lot of cases, a lack of analysis or not as many probably advisors and plan sponsors really looking under the hood of target date funds to understand really how they're built and all the different variables to consider when kind of evaluating and comparing these types of investments. So a few things to think about. One would be glide path. I'll come back to this in a few minutes, but how is the glide path structured? How does it move more conservative over time? Is it a to retirement or a through retirement strategy? Can it be customized at all? Typically, it cannot be, as I mentioned, in the small market, but sometimes you can do that in the larger market. Is there a focus on savings? Certainly, what are the returns of the target date fund? Does that manager offer any level of fiduciary protection? How are participants being engaged so that they don't misuse target date funds, which I'm also going to get back to. So there's a lot to consider when looking at this type of investment. And I, having owned an advisory firm in the past, I know I was guilty of really just offering the most convenient choice that was available as part of a product and really didn't dig in as much as I probably should have on behalf of my clients to understand how they were built. One of the biggest factors when considering which target date fund to offer is really that glide path structure. And what this shows is that there is significant disparity among target date funds in terms of their equity and fixed income exposure. So that gray, we call it the gray river there, really represents the entire target date industry, or the glide path, I should say, of the entire target date industry. And you can see that for a 50-year-old, an equity allocation can range from 49% to 85%. So if my wife and I work for two different companies, let's say we're 50 years old, and we're invested in the exact same target date fund, how much stock or equity that we have in that fund can really vary to a significant extent, which can certainly would definitely impact our return, both near and long term. I think where we are now with the market, and we've had this long running bull market, I think most believe that at some point in the next couple of years, this market will turn and probably pull back a good bit. If my wife's in that 85% equity target date fund, she's going to take a huge hit on her account compared to me, who's in the 49%. So something really to look at. I would say a bigger kind of startling statistic here is below that, the 50-year-old one. A participant retiring in 2020, so in essentially a year or so, could have anywhere from 13 to 61% of their account in equities. That is scary, especially on that high end there, because like I said, if this market pulls back, those folks in that high equity exposure target date solution are really going to take a hit. This is exactly what we saw in 2008, 2009. One of the other challenges with target date funds is that people oftentimes misuse them. And when I say misuse, what I mean is we teach people to not put all your eggs in one basket, to diversify. And when someone sees that they're in one fund, or in their mind representing one fund, they feel the need to diversify, to put their money in different investments, even though, as most of us on this call, I'm sure, know that a target date fund is meant to be a diversified investment in and of itself. If you don't understand that, then the tendency is to think you should spread your money out, which actually can hurt returns. It does hurt returns because of that over diversification. So, partial target date fund investors average 2% lower than full target date fund investors. 2 out of 3 people only hold a portion of their investments in a target date fund. That's not a great statistic. So, how the employees of a company are using target date funds can really make a huge difference on their return. Okay, so let's shift over here for the last 10 minutes or so into managed accounts as a solution. So this is just a nice, I think, snapshot of personalization and how things can evolve over time. It wasn't that long ago that we walked into a coffee shop and you got a cup of coffee. maybe you just got a black cup of coffee, or maybe you got kind of crazy and added sugar and cream, things like that. Well, today, you walk into a Starbucks and there's about 2,000 different ways that you can order a cup of coffee. I know my daughters beg me to go to Starbucks all the time. They're 14 and 11, and they get a drink that looks like what we have on the right, some sort of frappuccino. I'm not sure. I think it's a milkshake in disguise. But they can offer, or they can buy almost whatever they want, or any type of coffee at a Starbucks. 80% of consumers today are more likely to do business with a company if it offers some type of personalized experience. So we see this in a lot of areas, Amazon being another great example. Back in the late 80s, when you wanted to order a gift or, order something, you would look at the Sears catalog, get it in the mail, you'd flip through it, you pick out what you want, you'd either send your order in the mail, or maybe you'd call in, and you'd get it in 3 weeks. Today, especially with Amazon Prime, you can order whatever you want and it's delivered within a day or two. And beyond that, Amazon then develops a profile of you, so they know what you want and what your preferences are before maybe you do. And it's a really powerful model, but it's all about creating that kind of personalized shopping experience for individuals. I like Chuck Taylors, and you can see on the left, that's your standard Chuck Taylor. But today, in the past few years, they've rolled out a custom Chuck Taylor model where you can go online and for, I think it's $80, customize these Chuck Taylors in about 100 different ways. You order them, you get them within 2 or 3 weeks. This is my Stadion version. But the point of all this is to say that in many parts of our lives, personalization has become the norm. Inside of a 401k plan, personalization is very, very rare. We tend to treat everybody the exact same way, and we think that needs to change, and managed accounts will help us do that. If you compare a managed account to a target date fund, these are some of the biggest differences. Whether it's a managed account or a target date fund, the glide path of the allocation is going to get more conservative as someone gets closer to retirement. That's somewhat irrefutable, that is the right decision in terms of asset allocation as someone gets closer to needing the money. Most target date funds are going to offer a single glide path, whereas managed accounts will offer multiple to allow for differences in risk tolerance. Certainly the customization is much greater with managed accounts. I'll show here in a minute how we actually have seen that people that are in managed accounts make more money and they save more money. Stadion and other managed account providers generally act as a participant level fiduciary, where we are taking discretion over the accounts of participants. That's not the case with any real target date fund families or fund managers. Ongoing participant engagement, you need to stay in front of people, you need to stay relevant, help them continue to kind of stay the course. Things like risk tolerance, investor behavior, that's all factored in when building a managed account. Not the case with many target date funds. And then kind of that ongoing reevaluation as life evolves and making changes as needed. I'm going to zip through here pretty quickly on the last probably 10 or so slides just to stay within the 30 minutes. But as you think about customization inside of a retirement plan, you can kind of see this evolution from target date funds where there's a single factor used all the way through managed accounts, where on the right there, those are different data points that are used by us and other firms to create a portfolio. So someone's salary, their savings rate, their balance, gender, outside assets, these are all things that kind of make us unique that are used to build a portfolio specific to that individual. Managed accounts have become much more prevalent over the past 10 or so years. Today, about 58% of plans actually offer a managed account. Now, they are not always offered as the default. Typically, that's going to be, as we talked about, your target date fund. So they're offered in a lot of cases as an opt-in or participant choice model. But many plans are offering them today, which I think is telling, because more advisors and sponsors are realizing their benefits. This probably isn't a surprise to a lot of you that, generally speaking, your older employees are the ones that take advantage of a managed account versus your younger age group. And I think that's probably because they've accumulated more assets, they have more complicated needs. And when you're younger, being defaulted into something that's just based on your age, when your needs are pretty simple, is probably okay. But as you get older and as you have a higher account balance and get closer to retirement, oftentimes something more custom tends to be a better fit. So great stats here that I think validate the benefits of managed accounts. People put away more when they're in a managed account as compared to target date funds, and to a significant extent, about 3% more. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that people are more engaged. They're paying attention a little bit more. There's communication that's helping them drive up their savings rate. Oftentimes, people in target date funds are defaulted at that 3% level. They don't ever make a change, and that really drives that average deferral down. And then investment returns. Managed account users typically get a better return than target date funds. And I'll come back to that point in a minute as to why we think that is. Also, someone in a managed account stays in a managed account longer than they do when they're invested in a target date fund. It's stickier, which is really what we want people to do. We want them to stay invested, stay in a portfolio that's right for them, and not jump in and out, because that tends to hurt investment returns. This chart speaks to that a little bit. Might be kind of hard to see. This was actually a study done by Empower, who's I think the second largest record keeper in our industry. What the blue line shows is this is call center activity specific to people wanting to transfer their money. And these are different dates where there were significant pullbacks in the equity markets. And as I said earlier, oftentimes people see a negative return or a negative day in the market, and they panic, they call in, and they want to move their money. The blue line are people that are not in a managed account. Then you see the yellow line are the managed account users, and the volume of transaction requests to move their money is much, much lower. And that's likely because when someone's in a professionally managed account, they know they're being taken care of. I think they feel more comfortable when the market kind of goes through these roller coaster time periods that they're going to be okay compared to those that are kind of trying to go it alone. Okay, the last minute or two, I just want to spend on Storyline, which, as Brian mentioned, is our managed account offering available through Epic. We take in to consideration a lot of variables when managing participant accounts: risk tolerance, their age, obviously, how much they're saving. As I've said, we position ourselves sort of in contrast to a target date fund, which puts everyone in the same bucket. We use these different variables to recognize kind of these unique characteristics of each individual. We make it very, very simple. So we know that asking someone to go through a 42-question questionnaire doesn't work. People don't want to engage. So we have a 9-question kind of quiz or questionnaire that we use to determine someone's risk tolerance, and we can build a portfolio based on that and age, or also factor in some of those other variables. That's just a quick snapshot of the risk tolerance questionnaire, which we can demo for any of you that are interested. This gives you a kind of an image of the different glide paths that we use that really span that target date industry, or that gray river I talked about earlier. We use those different glide paths again to give optionality, or to create that personalization across those different glide paths based on someone's their individual risk tolerance. We do operate as a fiduciary, so we take discretion at that participant level. We do not operate as a plan level 338 fiduciary. So those of you that do that type of work, that is not what we do. We complement that by taking that position at a participant level. We have kind of human beings throughout the country that are available to meet with you, meet with plan sponsors, meet with individual employees, really to get them comfortable with Storyline, answer their questions, and hopefully help them enroll and customize. We work with Epic and coordinate communication that goes out on a regular basis to participants to, as I said, try to stay relevant, stay in front of them. And this can be customized based on the different messages that the plan sponsor would want to communicate to their participants. For advisors, we are a leverage point. There are many advisors that don't necessarily have the time or inclination to work with the small balance participants, and that is something that we are very happy to do. When we meet with participants, we gather information, including outside assets, that we can pass on to the advisor of record on the plan, and we don't manage money, retirement money outside of a 401k plan. So if someone's got an IRA of $500,000, we can pass that information on to the advisor, which allows them to kind of target their marketing and focus on the participants they'd like to. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, we have a tremendous amount of flexibility as far as customizing a managed account. So on kind of a selective basis, if you're an advisor and you like Storyline, but you want to have input on the underlying funds that are used inside of it, or the glide paths that are used, or different things like that, that's a discussion that we are very happy to have with you. It takes some work with Epic as our partner to get there. But if you do a lot of retirement business and you're interested in playing a role in the delivery of the managed account, that's something that we can certainly talk to you about. And then just in closing, some of the reasons advisors and sponsors hire us is there is no plan level fee for our service. It's only paid by the participants who use it. You know, it's a benefit for all employees, regardless of their account balance. To mention, we are a fiduciary. All the portfolios are personalized. We have that active engagement on an ongoing basis with both participants and plan sponsors. And then finally, we only work through advisors. We don't do direct business. We don't compete with you as an advisor. We partner with you to help you grow your business. So with that, Brian, I went a few minutes long, tried to power through at the end there, but I just want to thank you again and thank all the folks on the phone. And I think we can open it up to for a few questions.
Sounds great. Thanks, Todd. As Todd mentioned, we'll open it up to questions here. Please enter those into the GoToWebinar questions panel, and I'll run them by Todd. Todd, I'll rephrase a couple that have come in already. One relates to just the concept in the marketplace. Obviously, we'd all love to just serve large and mega plans where they more often than not do have a managed account solution, but we haven't really seen massive penetration in the small plan marketplace, which many of us play in. Putting on your advisor hat for a minute, how would you kind of simply and eloquently frame this up and kind of show a plan sponsor that this might be something that's worthwhile to explore in their plan for their participants if you're just a small, 20-person company, for example?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you talk about things in terms of personalization, and as I used a few examples there with Starbucks and Amazon, I think when you ask someone or ask a client, do you believe something that's more personalized is better than something that treats everyone exactly the same? 100% of people will say yes. That makes sense. You would think. And so then the next step there is, well, there is an option inside of 401k plans that does build personalized solutions or portfolios for participants. And it's something that can live next to a target date offering or be in lieu of that target date offering. And I think if you phrase it that way, keep it very simple, most plan sponsors are going to say, well, that sounds pretty interesting. I'd love to learn more. And, that's where we come in and can kind of walk the advisor and or the plan sponsor through how it works.
Great. Thanks. So engagement's pretty important here, and it drove some of the stats that you showed of managed accounts versus target date funds and other solutions. Can you kind of touch on some of the best practices or things you guys have been doing to drive that engagement, and also kind of touch on a little bit of the future of what you're doing to gather more information about people, even if they're not proactively providing it, so they can get customization without even entering a single piece additionally?
Yeah, it's a great question. Engagement in general in retirement plans is difficult, but really important. In the managed account world, if you just offer a managed account on a participant choice or opt-in basis, typically less than 10% of people will take advantage of it. And that just speaks to kind of the apathy and the confusion and things that I talked about earlier, where people just don't pay attention and don't engage. So the most effective way to get people into a managed account is to use it as the default and to re-enroll everyone into it, which you're very much allowed to do. I think it's a good strategy, because I always say, instead of trying to get people on the right track from kind of being on their own, why not start people on the right track? And if they want to jump off, they can. And so that's the best way to get people in. But then the ongoing engagement, really, I think the most effective way to do it is through individual participant meetings. You can send mailers, you can send emails, you can do those types of things, and you'll get the attention of some people. But if you don't sit down one-on-one with individuals, it's really hard to get them to take advantage of this. And so that is a service that we offer. We also work with advisors that like to do that. Whether it's us or the advisor, I think it's a really important activity, and no doubt is where you see the highest level engagement inside of 401k plans.
Thanks, Todd. Another question relates to compensation. It actually kind of ties into the last comment you made. How does offering this change the compensation for an advisor on a plan? And I can chime in on that as well. I know we've talked about that quite a bit, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the easy answer is it doesn't, or it doesn't have to. So if you're an advisor that has a plan and you choose to offer Storyline, you can still continue to charge what you're charging, whether that be a commission model, or many advisors today are using a fee-based model. That doesn't need to impact that at all. There are some advisors that are looking for ways to kind of monetize a service like this, and there are a couple ways you can do that. Number one is you can just simply charge a higher advisory fee. So let's say your fee was 50 basis points. By offering a managed account where perhaps you're going to do more work or play a bigger role, you could charge 60 basis points across the entire plan. Perfectly fine. Advisors do it every day. The other way to do it, which is a little bit more difficult, is that you have the ability to charge a fee on the managed account assets. You have to be careful how you do it. You have to do it in a way where you're providing education, not specific advice, not operating in a fiduciary capacity, because if you're charging more on one part of the plan versus the other, and you're pointing people to that part of the plan where you're going to get paid more, that's potentially a prohibited transaction. So you have to be real careful there, but there is a way to do it. But again, short answer is, and this is the way most advisors handle it, they view this as an enhanced benefit and best practice for the plan sponsor and the participant, versus necessarily a way to make more money.
Yeah, I agree with that. And maybe said differently, but the same point is, if you're serving as a 321 or 338 at the plan level today, you can offer this managed account as something that you're recommending or endorsing as a fiduciary as appropriate for the plan and get paid on it just like anything else in the plan. The same goes if you're operating in more of a non-fiduciary, fee-based consultant type role, handling education, enrollment, and again, those non-fiduciary services. Well, this is part of what's in the plan, and your services would still apply to it, so it wouldn't necessarily diminish your comp, as Todd said. If you are looking to potentially increase your comp by offering something like this, it's probably worth kind of a consultative conversation with the folks at Stadion and Epic jointly, and we're glad to have those conversations. It can be done, just needs to be put together the right way. All right, and with that, I think that does it on the questions. Thanks again to Todd and Stadion, and thanks again for everyone tuning in today. Again, we'd be happy to connect you with the folks at Stadion and get you plugged into Storyline, so please reach out to your Epic sales consultant or relationship manager so we can make that happen. And appreciate everyone's partnership and hope to see you at our next session. Thanks all.
Thank you.